Your freedom. Now, when you get to the Statue of Liberty, if you want to get to the top, you have to climb. It's a spiral staircase, 354 steps to the crown. In the crown, 25 windows offer a wonderful view of the harbor. As we get ready to pass the Statue of Liberty and turn around, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shores sent these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. The Statue of Liberty first on the right, then we'll turn around. Take a look at this view of Manhattan on the left. It is.
Ecco, ecco. Aspetta, volazio, ora facciamo.
Black glasses, and Uncle Danny has them on too. Take a picture together. Look up, look at the camera. Right there, you're looking at him. Let's see, look. Uncle Danny, you're having a good time. Uncle Danny, you're having a good time.
The Tibetan art collections in the Western Hemisphere, and the 26-acre Snug Harbor Cultural Center has art galleries and museums. Now, Staten Island was all farmland until 1964. That's when the suspension bridge over your right shoulder was built to connect Staten Island with Brooklyn, and that's the Verrazano Bridge. Named for the first European to see New York Harbor, the Italian explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano. He sailed into the harbor in 1524. Sailing underneath the bridge takes us to lower New York Bay, then out to the Atlantic Ocean. Too bad it's so foggy out there. On a clear day from here, you usually get to see Portugal. That's how I see who's paying attention, but it doesn't matter. I get paid by the word. I keep going. Back here. The island off to the right with the housing on it, that is Governor's Island. Got its name because in 1702, the English governor Lord Cornbury built his mansion there. He was an interesting guy. He was a cross-dresser. He even had his official portrait done in his favorite gown, and I guess that's why England shipped him here. Governor's Island is the oldest active military base in the country from the 1790s harbor, and that's why we built the forts, to keep them out. Well, the invasion never happened. The fort served as a military prison from our Civil War until 1966. Then the Coast Guard moved in, turned it into a daycare center. Makes sense. Today it's used for storage. On top of the fort, see that black object? That's a real cannon. Never fired in anger. Of course, for many years it had miles of waterfront. In area, we are large enough to include the ports of Liverpool, Hamburg, Amsterdam, Antwerp, and London.
Nice pants,
Entering the East River, it will be Brooklyn on the right, Manhattan on the left, and straight ahead of us, the first bridge we come to, that is the Brooklyn Bridge.
Maria's belly on the boat.
That's the second oldest bridge in the city. We'll see the oldest one a little later. This in a tavern, they have a couple of pints, and he died fairly wealthy. Medical attention. Learn about preventive medicine, about nutrition, about health. While they're on board, they are given a 5-hour cruise around the harbor. It's a barge. It has no power on its own. A tugboat escorts it around the harbor. Past the floating hospital, there are 2 piers covered with white bubbles. Underneath the bubbles are tennis courts, and that would be the New York Health and Racquet Club. The tennis courts rent for up to $100 an hour. That's why they've called it the New York Health and Racquet Club. Nice racket. I mentioned both of those sites because between the floating hospital and the tennis courts is where we see Wall Street. Wall Street gets its name because in 1653, the Dutch built a wooden wall there to keep the English out of the colony of New Amsterdam. The wall did no good. You can tell that building, the street going inland will be Wall Street. As we pass by Wall Street, keep looking up it. Let your eye follow as it opens up to us. Then slightly over your left shoulder, you will look up the entire length of Wall Street and get to see Trinity Church. So we pass the floating hospital, and right by the tennis court, see that tan building. Just before the tan building, the street going inland, Wall Street. And let's watch as Wall Street opens up. Now we're going to start to look straight up Wall Street. Keep watching. And we're looking up the entire length of Wall Street almost. And coming into view, there it is, Trinity Church. See it? Where these tall ships are on the left, this is a 12-block historic district called the South Street Seaport Museum and Marketplace. The newspapers and is published. The Post is the oldest continuously published daily newspaper in the country, founded in 1801 by Alexander Hamilton. Inland from there, you'll see a fairly tall red brick apartment building. That is Confucius Plaza, where Chinatown is located. Chinatown, about 40 square blocks in area and a population of over 300,000 people. Now the next bridge is the Manhattan Bridge. It takes you from Brooklyn. There's a nice view of the Pioneer. What a great picture. The schooner on the left. The picture and canal here in Little Italy is the Feast of St. Anthony. It's happening daily till 11:30 at night through the 29th of May. Mott Street between Hester and Canal, the Feast of St. Anthony. That was once the center for the Eastern European Jewish population. The area retains a lot of the old world flavor, especially on Sunday. Brooklyn, Manhattan, Williamsburg. And I think of that every morning when I start my BMW. On the right, we're coming up to a power station. There are several of these on the water. It allows fuel barges to unload fuel. Just past the power station on the right is an inlet with some cranes. And that's an old shipbuilding yard. That's the old Brooklyn Navy Yard.
The whole area we have to run video, jogging. My friend's father's in it. Who's that?
Now ahead of us, right along the waterfront on the left, we're going to come up to a large group of buildings made out of white marble and green glass. That would be the headquarters to the United Nations. 445, so it will be the United Nations. The buildings made out of white marble and green glass, coming up on the left along the waterfront. So it will be Utah Memorial passing on the right, the United Nations passing on the left. Her neighbor, Tony Award-winning composer Stephen Sondheim, has the townhouse next to her. We don't see those two. They're inland from here. Just beyond Latoya's building is a tall silver building with a 45-degree angle roof. That's the headquarters of Citibank. That's the Citicorp Center. The angle was supposed to have solar. He is the same person who designed St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue and the original building of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. And if you have today's New York Times in the city section, they have a FYI column. There's a little question about that building. They're trying to raise money to restore it, or at least stabilize it. My BMW, see it? Now I said Roosevelt Island was a complete community further north of here. If you lived on Roosevelt Island and you worked in Manhattan, you would commute home either by subway or by aerial tram. Yes, it's on the 24 of them are specialists that range from surgery to acupuncture. There are 9 museums, including the Cooper Hewitt Museum, the Jewish Museum, the Guggenheim Museum, the Museum of the City of New York, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, with its 3 million works of art spanning 5,000 years of human history. Now, most of our museums are closed tomorrow, with basically these exceptions. The Museum of Natural History, they go in different directions, so often when they meet, there is turbulence and whirlpools in the water. There used to be a lot of rocks in Hellgate, and every year, thousands of ships would sink on the rocks. The rocks have been blasted clear, so it is relatively safe to travel, but some areas are as deep as 120 feet. The East River flows ahead through Hellgate, veers off to the right underneath 2 bridges out to Long Island Sound. We'll pass through Hellgate, we'll veer off to the left, and we will enter the Harlem River. The Harlem River is like the East River. It is a tidal strait, a body of water connecting two bodies of water. The Harlem River looks like a jail. That is a private girls' school. That's the brilliant center for the local community. The East River will flow off to the right underneath the two bridges out to Long Island. Museo del Barrio, the only museum in the United States dedicated to the art of Puerto Rico. Ahead of us, that green bridge is a footbridge. It connects Manhattan with Ward's Island. The railroad is what made Harlem accessible to the city of New York. And after the railroad was laid down, the developers started to build up here. And Harlem became the center for much of our black... By the way, for the parents of children on board, please a reminder, there should be no running around the ship, no playing on the steps, and no climbing on the chairs. Not only can your children hurt themselves, but they can hurt other people. So please, we want everyone to always head up north just to visit the Bronx. It's as good as that story gets.